All right, hey, what's up, guys? Coach Mac, Play Fast Football. Uh, Thought I'd take a chance on a Friday night. We haven't done our YouTube live this week. I know Friday nights might be tough for people, but didn't get a chance earlier in the week to do our YouTube live, so I figured I would go ahead and take a chance and do one tonight. So hope you guys are doing um, well out there. Hope everything is going okay in your world with whatever you are up to. We are now in the part of the year where there is no football going on. Um, the football that we speak of, the NFL, college, um, and we're now in that off-season grind, right? So we're in that off-season mode where we don't have games to watch. Um, we don't have anything to look forward to. Just finished the week with the Super Bowl. Thought it was really good game from what the things that I saw. I never really watched the Super Bowl live. I'm not a Super Bowl type person, but watching throughout the week and going back and look at some of the things that occurred and listening to everybody talk about the game. It seems like it was a great football game, and appears that one of the best players on the field currently. Obviously came up in big time situations. Interesting to see the 49ers get rid of their defensive coordinator 3 or 4 days after the Super Bowl. They had some really good numbers during the year. Struggled a little bit, I think, in the playoffs. Didn't play their best football. But, in every situation in the world that we live in, somebody ends up being a scapegoat. And you see it in, college and the NFL. You see it all the time. And you get to a situation now where the Niners have blown 2 or 3 leads in Super Bowls, and the big one is kind of it's it's one of those deals where it's haunting Shanahan now, and you get through another one, and somebody's got to be the scapegoat, and unfortunately Steve Wilkes was, which is kind of a shame. I guess you score first in overtime, whether you made the right decision to take the ball or not. You score, all you got to do is stop them, and you can't stop them, but that's the way the business is. I would say, Pat, to be honest with you, it depends on what we're seeing. Our personnel, I've carried America's Blitz, long stick, the A gap, blitz the B, blitz the C with the Mike and the Sam. Anytime we've been an odd structured team, I've carried that pressure forever. For as long as I've been a coordinator. When it's 5-man pressure deals, depending on what you're seeing, crossfires with A and B gap crossfires with the Mike and the Will. Obviously field boundary, depending on where you're getting your runs, where you think you're getting your runs. So it's, we change our pass week to week. We change, what we carry week to week. America's Blitz is in there almost all the time. Crossfire, A, B gap blitzes when we are an odd structured team, are almost always in there. But I would say that our stuff is more based on what we're seeing, what we're getting, what we think we need to do. Obviously, most 3-4 teams can get to bear at any time and send the Sam and the Will off the edge and get the bear front stuff. But I would think we've done it a couple different ways. One of the things I like to do with America's Blitz is I like to change the path of it and carry that pressure, but carry it a couple different ways. And the way we kind of explain it to the kids is it's a front side A gap, B gap, C gap blitz, and how we get to it with the Mike, the Sam, and the 4-eye, and what we do in the nose. Obviously, the nose is going to work away from it, but what we do with the Mike, the Sam, and the end, or the the 5 technique or the 4 technique, or depending on what you're playing, if you're tight front, base okie, shaded front, under front, whatever you want to, however you want to look at it in a 3-4 structure, we carry that Mike Sam pressure, and then we kind of change the pass from week to week to where, there's times where it's traditional long stick, Mike in the B, Sam in the C. There's times where we leave the end outside, we bring the Mike and the Sam both inside. Um, there's been times where I've left the end outside, put the Mike into B, and brought the Sam in the A gap underneath him. So for me, run blitzes are based on personnel we're seeing, run game that we're seeing. A lot of the time, we have our standard tracks that we run, and then each week we decide whether we want to carry those or not that week, as we limit the blitz package down. But we almost obviously you're going to move the front at times and send a guy off the edge. So the field side Sam nickel off the edge and dropping the weak side backer is a great change up, even though it's only bringing four. That's one of the when you see guys drawing up creepers today or sim pressures and things like that, the nickel from the field, which was your old fashioned switch deal. If you were an under front team or a 3-4 team that constantly brought the rusher, the jack, you would change it up and bring the Sam and slant the front to the weak side and then drop the weak side backer. So that one is still obviously always in play. I think you got to carry the Mike and the Will inside, however you want to do that, depending on who the nose is. Games with the Mike and the Will inside. For us, when we're 3-4, when we bring the Mike and the Will, we normally play 4 under 2 deep. When we bring the Mike and the Sam, we're normally 3 under 3 deep. So a lot of our, for me at least, a lot of my pressure is based on who's coming. I'll change the coverage behind that. So when I use the interior blitzes, a lot of the times we'll play 4 under 2 deep trap, kind of 2 deep trap type stuff with the Sam and a weak side backer now as the 2 hook or 2 vertical players, 2 seam players, however you want to consider it. But it all depends on what you're seeing. There's some stuff out there now where guys are bringing corners from the boundary and a nickel from the field to get the 5-man pressure. So, based on what you're seeing, what your personnel is, the one for us that is always in America's Blitz is always in almost every week, whether it's the true version of it or some type of altered version of it. We carry that almost every week. So to me, it would be personnel, what we're playing, what we think we're seeing, where we think we can affect the blocking scheme. And then we would always, the big thing for me is trying to change the coverage behind, especially 5-man pressures, right? So, if you're going to 5-man pressure, you want to be 3 under 3 deep, 4 under 2 deep. You want to be man free at times. So biggest thing is being able to change the structures. And we do the same thing with our 6-man stuff. So, we'll send 6 and be 0. We'll send 6 and be 2 under 3 hot. To me, that's how I think everybody looks at paths and who's blitzing and how multiple you can get with, pressure paths and who's coming. To me, the bigger deal is being able to change up coverage behind pressures to where I can send 5 and I can play 3 or 4 different versions of coverage. I believe last year for us, there were probably 4 main versions for us. So we'd send 5 and be 3 under 3 deep. We'd send 5 and be 4 under 2 deep. We would send 5 and we would be traditional man free. And then we would send 5 and we would play man on the skills with 2 underneath cut players that would handle the back if the back got out. So always trying to change how we play the back end of the 5-man pressures, just so you can kind of give a different look so they don't get in a world where, hey, the Mike and the Sam from the field are coming. It's 3 under 3 deep. I think that's where you can kind of get yourself in a little bit of trouble. So we try to vary that. And then the way we do it, our blitzes are categorized by families. So depending on the family that we're using, one family is going to be 3 under 3 deep with 2 guys coming. One family is going to be 4 under 2 deep with 2 different guys coming. One family is going to be man free. So once we get into those families, it tells you which 2 guys are coming, and then it tells you what the coverage is going to be behind it. So, that's how we change, and we are able to be multiple with what we are doing. We split the blitzes up into different families. Hey, Tyler, how are you, bud? We split the blitzes up into different families, and then we say, okay, when we're, if we're Marvel superheroes, that's always going to be the Mike and the Sam 3 under 3 deep. If we're using cars, as pressures, then that's always going to be the Mike and the Will, and we're going to be 4 under 2 deep. And if we're using, rock bands or music groups as the pressure, that's always going to be the Sam and the Will, and we're going to play man free. So we do it that way so that we get our kids in, we get our kids in a mindset of every time you hear this family, the two guys that are blitzing, and the coverage that we're playing behind it. So, within that family, we could change the path if we wanted to, but a certain family is always going to be the Mike and the Sam, 3 under 3 deep. A certain family is always going to be the Mike and the Will, 4 under 2 deep. A certain family is always going to be the Sam and the Will playing man free. That's the way we do it. So it gets our kids to understand their responsibilities a little bit easier. It lets us group things from front to front a little bit easier. Where some guys don't like it is, you now all of a sudden one week, if you want to bring the corner and the Sam from the field and, you want to change that up, do you have to create a new family for that? How versatile can you get within your pressure? So I like being a little bit more structured in our pressure deals. For us, I like knowing that if I have blitz families so last year we were tight front, over front, mint front predominantly in our base package. So we would have families of blitzes and there would be one blitz. So there would be, if it was the Marvel family, there would be a tight front Marvel blitz, an over front Marvel blitz, and then a mint front Marvel blitz. And we work it in that way. It's always the same 5 guys in the pressure. It's always the same coverage behind it based on the family. So that's how I feel like from front to front, we can be a little bit more versatile. That's how we can change coverages and get our guys to play, as fast as possible without thinking as much, right? So every time you hear the Marvel family, we're going to be 3 under 3 deep. If we're sending a Mike and a Sam the way we do it, we're always rotating to the Sam. So no matter what we do with our safeties behind it, they know if it's a Marvel blitz, if it's a superhero, they know that they are going to rotate to the Sam and we're going to play 3 under 3 deep. And if we're sending a Mike and the Sam, then the Will is always going to be in the drop and the weak side backer is in the drop. So the Will becomes the 3-hole player and the weak side backer becomes, the 2-seam player. And then the safety to the side of the Sam becomes the 2-seam player, or however you want to see, skiff player, seam curl flat, however you want a terminology. That for us, because we were 3 high, when we would use those pressures, the middle safety always became the 3-hole player. The safety to the side of the Sam always became a skiff player. And then the Will linebacker was always a weak side 2 skiff player because we were sending the Mike and the Sam in that family. So that's how we can get our kids to kind of think a little bit simpler, play a little bit faster, get some blitzes that are multiple from every front. So we can carry, we can have a superhero in over, a superhero in tight, a superhero in our mint front. And the way I design things, within our tight 3 high stuff, when I go to other fronts, the Mike is the guy that I use in those fronts. We've talked about this a million times. The reason I do that is because the Mike is not part of our base coverage package in our tight front because we have a middle safety or a 3 high safety that takes the place of the Mike. So when I change fronts, I use the Mike. I don't change personnel. I use the Mike as the 4th rusher so that now when I send 5 and I get into let's say a superhero family, if it's the Mike and Sam, well, if the Mike is part of the front, then with the Mike now being part of the mint front or part of the over front, he's obviously the 4th rusher. The Sam's the 5th rusher. And that's how we get to our 5-man pressures. And we can be, pretty multiple from all of our fronts. I don't, or at least in general, I don't carry any split field coverage pressures. Our pressures are predominantly 3 under 3 deep, 4 under 2 deep, man free, man with cut players. 6-man pressures become 0 peel, or 2 under 3 deep. So I don't pressure and play split field coverage. It's not something that we do. I know people do it. I know there's, a lot of people that have success doing it. It's not something that I do because I think the pattern matches become a little bit different. If you're now split field and playing some type of quarters or 2 read, but you're losing an inside dropper in theory, most of the time it would be split field. And from the pressure side, you might be playing split field, but then to the other side, you're playing something different because you only have 6 guys in coverage. It's hard to play true split field coverage principles when you only have 6 in coverage. So I personally do not use split field coverage when we pressure. We are typically 3 under 3, 4 under 2, man free, man cut, 0, 2 under, 3 hot with sending 6. So again, that's just what we do, right? So, every time we have these conversations, I like to tell people this is my opinion. This is what I do. This is why I like to do what we do. That doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it the only way. I try to stay as far away from being ultra exotic as possible. Um, just because I want some carryover. I want kids to play fast. I want kids to be able to, do the things. I want to be multiple. Don't get me wrong. I want to be multiple, but I want to be simplistic in that multiplicity. So, we try not to get crazy exotic with our pressures. Now, our third down stuff gets a little funky, but that's a package within itself. So, our third down stuff is where we get into pop outs and coverage based on which way the center turns and, deals like that. But those are third down deals. They're different than base defense. So, within our base pressure system, we are not a split field coverage team behind our pressures. That's just not what we do. So, again, that there's nothing wrong with playing that. There's plenty of guys that do it. You can play, you know, um, split field concepts where you're split. You're playing quarters or palms to one side, but maybe you're locking the other side. Again, you're losing a coverage player. So when you go from from 7 droppers to 6 droppers to play true pattern match is a little bit different. So I don't think you can consider it, true split field coverage. In essence, you could play different coverages on each side of the pressure, which would make it split field in theory. So, I certainly see, the benefit of that. Now we have, um, especially when we were 4-2-5, there were some 3-by-1 deals where we would play what essentially became probably split field stuff because we would go 3-by-1. We'd have certain pressures and we would check it to where we played our pattern match to the 3 receiver side, and then we played man to the single in the back, depending on who the fifth was. So we've done that at times. So I can't say that we've never done it, but this past year we didn't do it at all. We did it a bunch when we were 4-2-5. So Iowa State 3 high. I'd like to hear more about the run fit from you with their 3 down. Yeah, so the easiest thing, Rob, to tell you when you play, so we play it out of tight front, basically generically. We don't shade the front very often. We don't play it. Iowa State now plays a lot of, um, 5 shade, 4-eye to the side of the back, or they set the 4-eye where they want them, and then they play a shade and a 5. We still stay true to the tight front, and the reason for that is the Mike and the Will become A to C gap fitters. It makes it real easy for them, based on where the back is and based on what the flow is. You got one guy that's going to close an A gap off the nose, and you got another guy that's either going to be a front side or backside fallback C gap player. So within the tight front, I think it makes the fits for the Mike and the Will really simple. Probably need to get away from that a little bit and shade the fronts a little bit more, especially versus tight end surfaces. But for simplicity's sake, we stayed mainly tight front because the Mike and the Will's fits are really, really simple, and those guys can play really, really fast. And then, the one thing that we have to work on from time to time is with the middle safety in the fit. Sometimes we've got to figure out a way within the fits that the middle safety is sometimes different than the Mike and the Will, depending on what we're seeing. So there's times where, the middle safety will play faster and the backside backer will play a lot slower. There's times where I let the backers play really fast and the middle safety fits behind them. So, that's the only thing you got to look at with that is the middle safety becomes the third linebacker in essence. So, you got to be careful depending on how you're fitting certain things. You got to be careful sending the Mike, the Will, and the middle safety 100 miles an hour to whatever the flow or whatever the run is because you lose some cutback deals. So, that's one of the things that we've had to kind of wrinkle a little bit within the 3 high stuff is how I want to fit the middle safety. And then I got to talk to my linebacker coach each week and say, all right, how are you guys fitting things? What are you going to read this week? There's times where we fit off a sniffer. There's times where we fit off underneath keys. So, I've got to get with my linebacker coach and say, all right, what do you think you're going to do this week? And then, if he says they're going to fit off the sniffer and the sniffer ends up being number 3 and the middle safety's fitting off the same guy, I might have to work that week slowing the middle safety down a little bit. If the Mike and the Will are going to be fitting or falling back off the sniffer. So, those are all the things that you live and you learn. You got to go through when you're playing tight 3 high. But as far as the interior guys like the Mike and the Will, you can't find an easier system to fit. It's similar to old school 46 stuff where it's like, all right, because of the way we're playing the front, we really only have two gaps open that we can fit. There's going to be an A gap open. There's going to be a C gap open. We just got to figure out based on flow. And then, times. The other thing we got to figure out all the time is how we're going to play like zone read stuff. So do I want the middle safety to play behind it and be the extra hat to give me 1.5 on the quarterback, depending on what the other team's doing. So, for the most part, still absolutely love it to 20 and 11 personnel. Love it versus 10 personnel. Had some issues last year versus 21 and 12 and some other groupings. So, to me, it's one of those deals where, I love what we do and how we do it. I think, we have to wrinkle it a little bit now that we're going into year 3. I think we've got to wrinkle what we're doing a little bit because people are starting to figure out how we fit things, and they're starting to figure out personnel groups that can give us some issues, and they're starting to figure out, how to get things blocked a little bit better. The first year we did it, people had no idea. So when I took the defensive coordinator job at the school that I'm at, that first year, they had never been a tight front 3 high team. So I think we caught some people by surprise and had a lot of success. And in year 2, I think there were the better teams with the better coaching staffs kind of figured out how they could get us in some issues based off how we were fitting. So, they did a good job of looking at film from the year before and kind of figured out what we were reading and how we were fitting. So, we're going to have to make some adjustments to that this year. Yeah, if you're not too platoon, then obviously I think simpler is better anyways. I heard a great quote the other day. Somebody was talking about Mickey Andrews at Florida State, and he would always say, there's really a fine line between a confused player and a scared player. And a lot of times they look the same when they play on the field, so, having that guy that plays a little bit slower and reserved because he's scared and he doesn't want to be part of what's going on, and the guy that plays slower and reserved because he's scared to make a mistake because he doesn't really know what's going on, those guys end up looking real similar. So, there's a fine line between being multiple, being exotic, causing issues, but also, the fine line between where your guys start to slow down because there's just too much going on. So I would, in high school at least, I would always err on the side of simplicity. And there's ways to be multiple and kind of get exotic at times and make it stressful for the offense. I still think we need to attack as a defense and make things stressful for the offense. But, in the high school world, I think our guys doing things that our kids can do and playing schemes that they understand how to play, to me, is still of the utmost importance because, the confused player will never play well. So, I think especially when you're playing guys both ways, I think you really got to narrow it down and say, all right, look, this is what we really do. So I see. So the Will in the middle safety have the really, yeah. I mean, it depends on the flow of the run, Rob. It depends on where the runs are going. If the flow is front side at the Mike in the middle safety, then the Will needs to slow down sometimes. If the run is weak side to the Will, I slow the middle safety down a lot of the time because I'm the one that coaches him. So I want my linebacker guy to, I don't want my linebacker coach to worry about all that. So I let him fit it the way he thinks he needs to fit it. And then I can always change how I fit the middle safety because I'm coaching that position. So, that's kind of the way we do it. Again, doesn't make it the right way, doesn't make it the way I've never talked to anybody at Iowa State. I really have no idea how they do it. I've never talked to any of those 3 high teams. I've never really been in a clinic or a setting with them. So, we kind of play it the way we play it, the way that I know how to play it, and the way that I see it fitting and playing out in with our players. So, yeah, I mean, the thing with pin pull, Gus, is we know we're going to see it. So to me, it's one of those deals where the ball is now going where we want it to go. If for us, when we play tight front, we want no vertical entry. So once we get the ball going east and west, we feel a lot better with it. So obviously we see pin pull stuff. We see it all the time. It doesn't bother me all that much because um, we're ready to see certain runs because of tight front, and we rep those runs a bunch. And to me, it kind of plays in our hands because we want the ball going east and west. So, once we see pin pull stuff, we know that we want, we know that we want the ball going there. And now, our middle safety's got to be a really good player, and then how we play the edge. So we may from time to time change coverage up to play the edge different if we know the ball's going out there. So, if we're playing palms or two read and it's too open and we know that they're pin pull and we know that they're cracking the apex and they're making our safety fit from depth, there's times where we'll go to quarters and put the apex outside of number two. And now the pin pull's got to run the alley. They have no choice because they're not going to get the ball outside the nickel because the nickel's playing outside of two. There's times where we'll play three buzz and drop the middle safety down in the alley and widen the Sam out a little bit to kind of change the leverage, up on the pin pull stuff. But, and we do enough other stuff between pressure and playing some over front. There's enough other stuff that we do that can protect us versus pin pull stuff. But, I'm actually, I don't mind seeing it. Obviously, if teams are really good at it, it's an issue, but I don't mind seeing it because we know that's where we want the runs to be anyway. So I would much rather versus our tight front stuff. I'd much rather see and try to defend pin pull than see power counter inside zone balls that are going vertical right at us because we were really light up front. So I don't think we rep it like crazy, Pat, to be honest with you. I mean, I think it's just part of, the keys and the schemes of what we see. And it's not that much different than anything else that you see. The 4-eye gets a down block that he's got to play off of. The nose gets a back block, or depending on how they're trying to do it, the nose is going to see a certain block from the center that he's going to lag on. So I don't think for us, it's not that much different. Yeah, it's hard for the 4-eye to be a high gear, low gear player. That's more of a 5 technique deal. Um, the 4-eyes are not on the edge. So a lot of times the 4-eyes will get red from time to time. And that's where you would talk more high gear, low gear. High gear, low gear is more of a technique when a guy's being read off the edge or when he's the last guy to the edge and you're determining whether you're going to surf it or how you're going to play it. The 4-eyes don't really need to be coached that way that much, in my opinion. They're read some, but a lot of times they're being back blocked or they're trying to be scooped by a tackle. So, to me, it's more important a 5 technique or a blitzer off the edge. Those guys understanding whether they're low gear, high gear is, to me, is a lot more important in that scheme. For us, with our 4-eyes, it's not high gear, low gear. To me, is not as important with the 4-eye because I don't think he's going to be on the edge that much. We see predominantly back blocks where every the O-line is, the tackle's down, the guard's down, the center's back, and they're trying to pull GT counter or whatever they're trying to do. We don't from time to time, Pat, we might based on where the back is, but we don't stun them based on where the back is. We don't tell them. We try to explain to them the runs we think they're going to see and the blocks that we think they're going to see based on where the back is. But with the 4-eye, for me in a tight front with the 4-eyes, I don't get too exotic with those guys. With based on where the back is, if they're going to be red, we have to work a little bit harder that week on how we're going to play off of certain blocks. We actually the last year and a half, we actually visual keyed the guard and didn't visual key the tackle with our 4-eyes because of the read schemes and arc release schemes. So that gave us the ability when we got an arc release with a down block or a inside veer release from the guard that automatically made the 4-eye squeeze. And we did that simply because teams were starting to arc release and read the 4-eyes. So we changed the pressure key from the tackle. We chase the hell out of everybody. Yeah, we do. With our 4-eyes. But a lot of times the interesting thing, Pat, depending on where you are and what you see, a lot of times for us, if we're seeing power teams or counter teams, maybe GY, if they're pulling the guard, we get a lot of center back blocks on our 4-eyes and they try not to let us chase. So the good thing about that is that creates 3 one-on-one blocks. So, if the guard's got to come back to help it, if they're running power per se, let's say argument's sake, and they don't think their tackle can cut the 4-eye off and they got to use the center back on the 4-eye, well, now you're getting 3 one-on-one blocks. There's no double teams, right? So you're getting the center on the 4-eye. Maybe that is a quasi double team if the center's back and the tackle hinges. A lot of times they may send a tackle to the second level or use the tackle a different way if they're blocking back. But we get the guard down on the nose and a tackle down on the 4-eye on the front side. That's what we see, a ton. So the good thing is it creates 3 one-on-ones. If you got any D lineman that can play, you're going to get a bunch of one-on-ones. You eliminate double teams. And then you just got to equate the numbers of pullers, and that's where the middle safety comes in hand. Because now if they're getting pullers with all back blocks, you're going to be short a player, and they're getting 1 or 2 guys to the front side and they're blocking everything back. So you can't chase pullers. So, a lot of times for us, it's equating numbers with the Mike DeWill, the overhang, and the safety, depending on coverage when we're getting those pull schemes. So we would love to chase pullers as hard as we could if we get the chance. So if they're trying to run power counter and they're trying to hinge the 4-eye with the tackle, to me, that's where we have to win. We should never be hinged by a 4-eye because we visual key the guard. So when the guard leaves on his pull path, we should be humming inside with that guard. So again, that's just the way we do it. Doesn't mean that that's how everybody does it. Doesn't mean that that's the right way to do it. That's just something that we've done based on our personnel, what we've seen, what we think our kids do best. So, and to me, that's the beauty of football. That's the beauty of coaching. Everybody has a chance to do things differently. Everybody has a chance to adjust things based on their personnel, based on what they see. And again, there really is no right, wrong, and different. I think for the most part, the way we interpret things as coaches is there's the right, wrong, or indifferent is usually who's playing well at the time. And you want to go out and study who plays really well at that time. And, the teams that are playing really well, that's the technique that everybody wants to use. Right. And then the following year, you look at the offensive side of the ball. And 2 years ago, Tennessee was the flavor of the week and they beat Alabama and everybody wanted to know what Tennessee was doing. And Josh Heupel had it rolling. And then last year they lose the quarterback. They don't have, a Heisman Trophy or a Heisman Trophy contender at quarterback. And all of a sudden they're kind of pedestrian again. So, to me, the way football works a lot of the times is, we see who's hot. We see what they're doing. Are they even odd? Are they split field? Are they one high? And then the next season, a lot of things morph into, all right, well, what's the flavor of the week? What's everybody doing? The Iowa State stuff got hot a couple of years ago versus spread and 3 high and tight front and light box theories got, increasingly popular. And that was because they were playing really good football at a place that's generally not used to making a lot of noise in that conference. So, to me, that's what coaching becomes. It becomes flavor of the week and what's hot. And everybody wants to coach it now, like Kirby's coaching it because they're good. And like Saban's coaching it because they're good. So, same side gap in my area, but lots of counter and pin pull. Almost feel like my 4-eye to the back has to be so much quicker to chase the guard, and my 4-eye to the back can't get. Yeah, I mean, so that's a personnel deal depending on the types of 4-eyes that you have. If you have a 4-eye that's quicker and one that's thicker, and you want to play the thicker guy to the side, you're getting most of your gaps, and you want to play the 4-eye to the side of the back to chase some of that down. To me, that's a little bit more of a personnel deal. Our bodies last year, we didn't really have anybody thick. Our 4-eyes were both 190 pounds and 185 pounds. So that didn't change too much for us last year. But I could see, and it's similar to like the way Iowa State does things. And a lot of the people now, they'll set the 4-eye to the back, but then they'll play a shade to 5. So it almost becomes underfront, or at least similar to underfront fits in a way. There's a B gap bubble there and there's an A gap bubble on the other side. And, that's why a lot of those guys play more of the shaded front or the back front to where they set the 4-eye to the back. So if you had the personnel that you were moving around and that's how you wanted to do it, then I would put the smaller, quicker guy to the back and let him chase some things and create some havoc in the B gap and make them use the center to block him back on pull schemes by the guard, and then you'd play your bigger, thicker guy, um, you know, as a 4-eye to the front side of the gap, so he can handle the down blocks of the tackle. But again, that's all where you are, what you play, what you see. We don't do it. We don't move our 4-eyes a bunch. Like last year, our 4-eyes, we had a strong side 4-eye and a weak side 4-eye, and a lot of times versus tempo teams, they never change sides. So our blitzes are tied in that way also. So we've got to know what we call the end. We call one an end and one an anchor. We have to know where the end is and we have to know where the anchor is because our blitzes are tied to that. So, but for us in tight, we move them simply because of our pressure package and our stunts, but they're both 4-eyes. So you could play them without, they could play on one, they could play left and right if you really wanted to, but then I think your pressure packages change. So, yeah, I go back and forth with that, Pat, to be honest with you. We stayed tight for a long time. And, number one, we like the issues it created for the offense. Number two, I like the fits for the Mike and the Will. Um, but I'm now starting to see, where guys are talking more about layered fits now, and, that backers have to be ready to fix D linemen because D linemen don't always fit it the way it's supposed to be fit on paper. So, when you think more about gaps that move and fits that have to be more fluid and change on the fly that don't always look like you draw them up on paper. Um, when you think about that world, that leads me to believe that we can play some different shaded fronts and not always have to stay in tight. Our original theory was I stayed in tight because I wanted the fits for the Mike and the Will to be the same. And I didn't like when we started getting into shaded fronts. Now there's an open B gap. Does that change what we're doing? So that was originally the premise, but watching how we have to fit things now, and then reading some guys talk about fits that are more layered. And yes, you're supposed to spill with the end, but he doesn't spill. Now, what does the backer do? The backer's got to fix that on the fly, and second level fixes first level, and third level fixes second level. So, you know, thinking in theory or philosophically about layered fits and how the fits change based on maybe how the D line fits it, I think we can play different fronts now and not really get so concerned with, well, let's stay in tight because the fronts are A to C. I think our backers are now experienced enough and good enough to understand when the front changes, based on the flow and what we're trying to do, they're going to fit where we need them to fit based off what the D end is doing, because that's kind of what they do anyways. Once the game starts, you got all your drawings, and you got all your diagrams of how you want to fit runs from each front and coverage. And as soon as the game starts and everything starts moving, you don't always fit every run the way you've got it diagrammed. So backers and safeties and second and third level players have to be able to fix things and, quote unquote, ball fit things sometimes where, hey, I know where I'm supposed to go, but the defensive end didn't do his job, so I've got to fit off that. So, thinking about that theory this year coming up, I'm a little bit more open to shading some fronts and not always playing tight. But to be honest with you, right now in February, I don't know what we're playing next year. I don't know. I'm going back and forth from maybe going back and playing some 4-2-5 stuff, and our tight 3 high is just a package. I thought about going back to some of our 3-3 stack stuff because I think, the way the game changes from time to time, I think now what's happening is, offenses went into a world where they were spread for a while and they were trying to, create space, and then the defenses had to catch up with that. And now I think the offense is kind of flipping the script around, and I think you're seeing bigger personnel groups, and the offense is kind of going the other way because the defense has now just made all their adjustments to spread football. And that's more so at the college and the NFL, especially the college level now, right? I think some of the college guys, the Georgias and the Alabamas and the teams that can do it, I think they went back and started recruiting massive 300-pound linemen because everybody on defense was getting smaller. Everybody on defense was playing hybrid players to defend spread tempo stuff. So if you can stay ahead of the game and start recruiting a little bit different, then that takes a year or two for the defenses to catch up again. So all these teams that recruited light and they're playing hybrid positions or almost positionless defense with lighter players, now you're throwing 330 pounders up there again. That kind of, and that's the cat and mouse game with those guys. That's how they stay ahead of the curve. The offense changes, defense adjusts, offense changes again, and the defense has to adjust again. So, yeah. So, I mean, you can consider it stack, track, fallback, but if I'm away from the back, I'm thinking I'm going to be the A gap fitter 90% of the time on downhill runs. The only way that fit would change for me is if the back went flat across the quarterback's face and fast flowed to my side, then I would become a front side C gap and the will behind me would be the A gap player. But, um, day one meetings with the backers, I tell them all the time, if the back's away, I'm going to play the A. If the back's to me, I'm going to fall back C. So, that's just a kind of a reminder or buzzwords to talk to the backers about. You still got to read flow, but in general, I'm thinking if the back's to me, I'm probably going to stack, track, fall back, C. The only thing that would change, with that deal would be, are we reading pullers? Are pullers going to take us off our path? Is the back's path now flat and across where I can see his shoulders, and now it's full hard outside flow away from me and I become the A gap player. So, in general, that's some of the buzzwords we use talking about backfield sets when we're playing tight front. If the back's to me, I'm going to stack, track, fall back, C. If the back's away, I'm probably going to be in the A. So that's just how we talk to our players, but it still comes down to schemes and flow and what you're seeing. So, it's not automatic that you can say, all right, well, if the back's away, I'm running to the A, and if the back's to me, I'm running to the C. You can't necessarily do that. We change week to week, Pat, to be honest with you. There's weeks where if it's 11 or 20 and there's a movement guy that takes us to the ball, if there's a split flow guy, or a Y or a sniffer that takes you to 90% of the runs, we might read him. There's times where we can go back to near side guard. There's times where we just might read under keys and ignore the back. So, that changes for us week to week. So P block is special where the Sam's going to be playing, or the Sam or the nickel's going to be playing basically the corner's role in palms with man on number one, and you're playing read off 2 and 3. I call it mixed, so I don't call it special. So I don't really know what TCU calls special, to be honest with you. So yeah, we would play him with his ass to the sideline the same way we play the corner in palms. We wouldn't play him square. But for us, you got to remember P block. That guy's always a safety. He's never a Sam. So to be honest with you, if I was playing with a Sam, I probably wouldn't play special. But that's just me. We play it with a safety, and that's one of the things that we have to do all the time in our half line drills. Is our safeties have to get reps at corner and play. When we're trying to get the most reps in a drill, and we're trying, when it's not formation specific, I'll take the safeties and I'll play them. I'll mix them in with the corners, and I'll have them play palms off number one. If it's if we're doing a two-man half line drill and we want to get multiple reps, I'll play the safeties out there with the corners and I'll make them play it, because now when we get 3x1, it's the same concept. You're just doing it off of the number 2 receiver, not the number 1 receiver. So when we're trying to get reps in a drill, that's the way we do it. Come on. And then one of the things we did yesterday in our first 7-on-7 deal with a lot of younger kids, what we actually did with our pattern match, what we did with our pattern match stuff yesterday was we broke the kids into 2 groups, and it didn't matter what position they played. One group was learning how they match underneath off of the back, and the other group was learning how they match high off of the number 2 receiver. So, we split them up, and we basically what we're trying to do, not only create value for players that can play multiple positions, but we're trying to teach every player how we match the entire thing. So if we're going 4-on-3, two removed, and we're playing two read or palms, we're trying to teach every kid on the defense how we match those patterns. So how the underneath players match it and how the corner and the high safety match it, so that everybody knows how we match. So we know the routes that can beat us and we know where everybody fits. So now if we get certain releases, we can talk to the back end guys and go, all right, well, how do you think the backers are going to match that? Or, we see it, we can draw up a route concept and we can talk to the entire group and say, all right, well, how are we going to match this route concept? Everybody now knows what everybody does. And that's something that we did yesterday. And we decided that we want to do that with our guys, not only to get more value to where maybe a safety could become a nickel. Our middle safeties basically become the mic in when we're three high and we're playing two read or palm. So they need to know how the underneath guys, how they fit things. But then if we get an injury and we got to make a change, the middle safety may become a high safety. So they need to know how we fit. Plus our middle safety becomes the high guy when we play special. So he needs to know how to play the high part too. So, for us, the middle safety is kind of a hybrid. He needs to match low and high when we play two read, because if we're 3-by-1, he's going to match from the high spot. If we're 2-by whatever, he's going to match from the low spot. So that's just the way we play it. So we shuffle out. So our Sam nickel corner, however you want to look at it, that's playing palms, he's got his ass to the sideline. We shuffle out. Vertical for us is anything that is vertical deeper than the down player in the palms coverage. So, if it's 2-by-2, it's the nickel. If it's 3-by-1, for us, it's still the Sam or because we're three high. But that's the way we define it. We don't give a yardage. We don't give a depth. We give it a linebacker level. So the corners or whoever's reading off of that 2 to be the guy that's going to play 2 to the flat or 3 to the flat, depending on 3-by-1. For us, the way we do it, that guy is only going to come off if he gets that route to him underneath the linebacker level. Anything that goes beyond the linebacker level, he's never going to come off on. I got away from yardages and depths years ago. I think it's hard for kids to determine what 5 yards, 6 yards, 8 yards is. So I think a physical body is a better landmark than a yardage. So that's just how we do it. But again, like when you're playing two read or palms, everybody's rules and declarations are different across the country. The only thing that matters is your kids and your coaches know how to teach it and play it. You don't have to play it the same as somebody else. Somebody else's vertical declaration or 2 to the flat declaration can be completely different as long as they teach it with their rules and their kids know it, and you teach it with your rules and your kids know it. To me, I don't think there is you could argue for certain route combinations that there's a better theory, but as far as playing pattern match with consistency to get kids to understand how we're going to trade certain routes off or how we're going to match certain concepts, to me, having a landmark or a body that you're reading off of for vertical is a lot easier than a yardage or a depth or anything else. So, and again, that's the way we play it. That doesn't mean that's the way it should be played. That doesn't mean that's the way everybody plays it. That's the way we play it. So our nickel would play the palms concept off of, if it was 3-by-1, he would play off of number 2 the same way the corner plays off of number 1 in palms. We don't teach it any different. There's times where we may line them up a little bit different. But the technique is the same. What communication are you asking? How we set fronts or how we set we change coverage. So if we know that they're going to go after the nickel with the number 2 and 3-by-1, then we're going to change coverage. That's what we do. We don't really have in our base mix stuff, we don't have ways that we protect the nickel. We protect the nickel by changing coverages. So if we know that a team's going to go after that guy, in 3-by-1, and that's what they're trying to do, then we're going to change coverages. So when we're in tight front, there's the Mike linebacker makes a shut left, shut right call. And that tells the end who's the strong side 4-eye where to go. It tells the Mike where he's going to be. It tells the Will and the anchor. So our Will and anchor have to travel together. Our Mike and our end have to travel together because our stunts are built that way. Our blitzes are built that way. And then for us, the nickel's the only guy that really traveled. The nickel and the middle safety are the only guys that travel. So the nickel, the way we played last year, the nickel doesn't have to make a strength call. He just goes to the passing strength, and then our safeties are left and right. They're not field and boundary. They're not passing strength. And so nobody really travels with the nickel. Our safeties need to know where the nickel is. And if the nickel's on their side, there's certain coverages they can call. If the nickel's away from them, there's certain coverages they can call. So that's how we did it last year. I like to play high safeties that are hybrids that don't change sides for a lot of reasons. Tempo, motions, shifts, trades, things like that. When you get in the world of traveling guys to the passing strength and then teams start trading and motioning, you get stuck where you got to have coverage checks because you're only teaching guys to play on one side of the formation. And you end up finding out that the safety and the nickel are on a side and they trade the formation and you can't get them. And now the away safety is over there to the passing strength. And he says, well, coach, I can't play those coverages. You never taught me. So you end up having to check 3 deep or something else. So I like to play with high safeties that are hybrids so that depending on what we get. And we also play our Will linebacker as a hybrid. So when we're playing our tight stuff, our Sam and our Will, each one of them can play every version of coverage so that if it's a tempo team or a team that shifts trades and motions, if they shift us to where they get the passing strength to the side of the Will has the ability to play all the passing strength coverages just like the nickel does. That's something we do. It's not something everybody does. So in our tight 3 high stuff, the Sam and the Will basically have to be able to play all the versions of the coverages to the read side and the away side. So that helps us with tempo. It helps us with shifts and trades, and it limits our package a little bit because we can't teach as much. We can't be as specific with our coverages when we're asking guys to be hybrid players, but I think it makes it a little bit easier for them. We narrow down the coverage windows. And so for us, P block, one of the first things we do is we cloud that side. We play cover 2 to that side, and we pull the backside safety over to play 3 vertical, poach, whatever you want to. We don't do it with palms like most people do. We roll the corner down and kick it or cloud it because the corner plays man-to-man on number 1 when we play mix, and I think that that coverage disguises itself better than anything else. So the corner's down there like he's playing man, but he ends up being a jam funnel cover 2 player. And then for us in our 3 high stuff, depending on how we want to do it, we would do that from 3 high, and the middle safety would be the 3 vertical players. So it became to that side a version of like Tampa 2. If we weren't 3 high, if we were 4-2-5 and we did it, we would have to borrow the backside safety to play poach off of 3, which means the backside corner and the Will have to play man-to-man on 1 and 2 because you're losing the backside safety. So that's one of the things we would do. And then we played a bunch of stump the last 2 years to where it's basically midpoint style coverages. So if 3's vertical, it ends up looking like cover 3. If 3's not vertical, it morphs its way back to quarter. So our corner and our high safety would read off of 3 vertical. The corner's got a midpoint 1 and 2, and then the safety takes 3 up. If 3 is not vertical, the safety leans back to 2. The corner leans back to 1. The Sam plays stick over 2, or the nickel plays stick over 2. And if he's getting any vertical by 2, he's trying to knock it down before he delivers himself to the flat. So those are the 3 that we play the most. And then we play a bunch of 3 buzz where the middle safety spins down to the trips and we rotate to the middle of the field. But that's also because we drop 8. So we can play 3 buzz and not have a true rotation because we can still leave a weak side safety down as a D-gap player. And now when the middle safety spins, the safety to the side of the middle safety becomes the middle player. So it doesn't look like a true spin or rotation. They can't throw away from the rotation because the middle safety is rotating down front side, but the weak side safety's down on his side also. So you can't really look at it from a rotational standpoint and say that you want to throw away from rotation. So that's one of the bonuses to me with three high stuff is you have multiple three deep insertions because you have three safeties that can do it and they can rotate. And then we play double sky with the outside safeties and the middle safety defends the third. So now when you're getting double sky, it's double rotation, right? So if you're teaching a corner to throw, if you're teaching your quarterback to throw away from rotation or to throw off of rotation, he's getting rotation to both sides. So how does he read that? So one of the other benefits to being a three high team is not only if you start split field like we do in middle of the field open from the three high structure, I think there's so many three deep rotations you can get to that can really make it difficult on a quarterback if he's trying to pick a side or throw routes based off rotation. So that's just the way we do it. But been on for almost an hour tonight, guys. It's Friday night. I appreciate all you guys being here on a Friday night. Thank you for participating in our weekly Play Fast football chat. Again, this to me is the best way to communicate. Anytime we do videos, it's always get a message, respond to a message, and that gets kind of iffy. Guys will email me at times, and then that gets kind of iffy. In this setting, you have a question, you ask it, I can answer it, other people can answer it, other people can tell you what they do. So to me, this is the best setting for the interaction, especially in the off season now. This is kind of the best way for us to talk about any clinics we've been to, pieces of information you picked up. You can share them with everybody else. I can share them with everybody else. So appreciate you guys being here on a Friday night. Appreciate you following along with Play Fast and everything we do. Thanks for being around for all the stuff we do. Good night, Tyler, OHIO. Appreciate you guys following everything we do. Appreciate you following Play Fast. And thank you, Rob. Stay tuned for all the things that we got going on. P-Block, have a great night. Go Eagles, or I know you're a Philly guy. Appreciate everything that you guys do. Stay tuned. We got some good things coming up, some ideas that I want to throw around. So stay tuned to everything that we're doing. We'll keep doing videos. We'll keep doing YouTube lives. And, again, these are the best interactions I think that we can possibly have. So appreciate you guys being here tonight. Have a great weekend. Have a great 3-day weekend. If you're off Monday, enjoy the off season. Remember, you won't play well till you play fast. I will catch every one of you next time.